Hi friends! Today we're talking about internal parasites, or worms, different species, the problems they cause, and how you can help your goats resist parasites, how to monitor your herd, and how to treat them when you need to. Internal parasites are one of the biggest problems that goat owners face, and being armed with some strategies to monitor, support, and treat your goats is the best defense against these little invaders. Let's get to it. Hey friends, welcome to the Get Goatwise podcast. Are you longing to raise goats and other animals for food but don't know where to start? Do you want to be more self-sufficient and less dependent on the grocery store? Do you wish you had a mentor to walk you through raising livestock? Hi, I'm Millie, animal scientist, cattle girl turned goat rancher, co-owner of Dry Creek Livestock, and simple living enthusiast. For 15 years, I've been on a mission to raise all of our own meat, eggs, and dairy. Here, we'll talk about raising goats and other homestead livestock, how to create sustainable animal management systems that actually work, and a bit of off-grid life with kids and livestock. If you're ready to take control of your food supply, raise livestock with confidence, and provide your family with the most nourishing meat, eggs, and dairy available, you're in the right place. Kick off your muck boots, pour a cup of coffee, and let's talk livestock. Hey friends! I want to tell you about a chart I use to tell kidding dates at a glance and plan breeding based on when I want goats to kid. I have this chart glued on the back page of the family wall calendar, and I even print half-size versions and glue them into my record-keeping books. It's that handy, and I'd love to send it to you for free. If you've been around here long, you know I have a goal to reach 100 reviews on Apple Podcasts by the time I publish episode 100. That's only 18 episodes away. So, if you head on over to Apple Podcasts, scroll down to Ratings and Reviews, tap the purple words, Write a Review, give me some stars and write a quick thought, take a quick screenshot before you submit, and then email me the screenshot, I'll email you my kidding due date calculation chart. This is seriously one of the handiest charts around for planning your production schedule and knowing when to expect kids. So here's the short version. Go to Apple Podcasts, write a review, screenshot it, email it to me, millie@getgoatwise.com, and I'll send you the chart. Easy enough. If you've already left a review, thank you. You can either email me a screenshot of your review from the ratings and reviews section, or just send me the alias you used to write your review, and I'll get the chart emailed right to you. Your review helps more families discover the show, which means more people taking control of their food supply, and that's really what this is all about. Here's what's happening on the ranch this week. I think we are officially in the season where it freezes every night. Early last week, the temperature dropped to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. We sold our dairy does, which is one of the harder days for me because I spend so much time with them and I get to know their personalities so well. But it was time to retire Betty and Wilma. We aren't going to be out of the dairy goat business for long. I'll be getting some alpine does from a sweet gal just a few hours away, so I'm looking forward to that. We weaned the goat kids this week. Typically, weaning is kind of a hard job and pretty much dreaded by everybody. As our herd has grown, it's gotten to where it usually takes hours of catching and sorting goats, hard physical work, and a fair amount of stress and frustration. But this year, we have the new handling facility that Kinder Ground helped us purchase, and weaning took 45 minutes. It was low stress and easy on us and the goats, and I'm sure that reduced stress will be a big positive on the production side. We don't usually see a lot of sickness in our weaned kids, but they definitely go through what we call an ugly phase for a few weeks, where growth slows and they're not as playful. I'm confident that the lower level of stress at weaning will shorten up that ugly phase and get them back to normal much faster. The handling equipment has a 3-way sorter, so all we had to do was run the goats through the chute and swing a sorting gate to send the kids off in a different direction while the does kept going right back into their regular pen. The equipment is from Lakeland, and we are really pleased with it so far. We also had some visitors from Utah State University, which is always fun. They were here to see what we're doing with the goats and grazing and to make a plan for spring when they'll bring their students here for a visit. I really enjoy the opportunity to toss around ideas with the people who are up to date on research and actively involved with the latest ideas on grazing, forage, and livestock. One topic that came up was parasites, specifically the Barber pole worm, which I didn't know had become a significant issue in our state. I thought it was more specific to the South, but apparently it doesn't mind Utah goats and sheep. I haven't talked much about parasites on here because it's not something that is a big problem in our dry climate and our current goat herd. Not to say we don't have parasite problems, it's just not as all-consuming as it is for some herds. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about internal parasites, how to test for them, and how to manage your herd to reduce the parasite load. Before we dive in, just a reminder, I'm not a veterinarian. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Always check with your own veterinarian before treating or medicating your animals. All right, the primary internal parasite for goats is the Barber pole worm. Haemonchus contortus is the scientific name. This is the troublemaker. It's a blood-sucking stomach worm that resides in the abomasum, or the true stomach of small ruminants. The common name, Barber pole, comes from the red and white twisted appearance of the female, red from the blood-filled intestine and white from the uterus. The female worms lay 5,000 to 10,000 eggs a day in the stomach of the host, which then pass in the feces. The eggs hatch in the feces and progress through L1, L2, and L3 larval phases. L3 is the infective stage, where the larvae migrate out of the manure and onto the moisture layer on forage. Larvae can survive several weeks or even months on a pasture, depending on conditions. They typically stay 1 to 4 inches from the ground, and this is why grazing pastures short can promote parasite infestations. Once goats ingest the larvae, they migrate to the abomasum where they feed, develop further, and reproduce. Barber pole worms cause anemia, bottle jaw, weakness, and can even cause sudden death. They thrive in warm, humid conditions, but the worm can adapt to cold climates when the larva will arrest inside the host and survive until conditions improve for its life cycle outside the host. So that's our big one. Other common parasites: the brown stomach worm, which affects digestion and nutrient absorption, the bankrupt worm, which causes diarrhea and poor growth, lungworms that trigger coughing and respiratory distress, and tapeworms, which are visible in feces, usually not life-threatening, but often indicate a high parasite load. There are 3 main factors that contribute to parasite load: breed and genetics, feed, and management. Some breeds and specific genetic lines are more susceptible to parasites. Back in the days of the show goat herd, we were always dealing with these problems and had our herd on a routine deworming schedule to try to keep it under control. I know better than to do that now, but at the time, we did the best we could with what we had. Not only were we dealing with internal parasites, but also coccidia blooms and external parasites like lice. Those goats were just more susceptible to all these problems. That was bad news then, but it's also good news for goat producers. You can select and breed for parasite resistance. In our Spanish and commercial Boer goat herds, you rarely see a parasite issue except in compromised or older goats. We no longer have a routine deworming schedule, and we only treat animals that need it. We also cull goats that regularly have a high parasite load. Not only do they spread the problem, but we also don't want to continue to propagate genetics that do not have acceptable parasite resistance for our area. When goats graze a biologically appropriate diet, which consists of less grass and more woody plants, brush, shrubs, and forbs, they get inherent protection from parasites from that diet because of the high tannin content. Tannins bind proteins in the digestive system, which affects parasite metabolism, interferes with parasite reproduction, and ultimately reduces fecal egg counts. In addition to the tannin content, shrubs, brush, and woody plants also encourage grazing behavior that reduces parasite infection in the first place. As they graze high above the ground, they'll be much less likely to consume parasite larvae that are present near the ground from eggs in the feces of an infected goat. When browse and shrubs are available for grazing, goats will be healthier, and healthy goats are less likely to carry a parasite load. That leads us to management. Grazing management can be a valuable tool for limiting parasite exposure. Just like the shrubs and taller woody plants, if you don't allow goats to graze right down to the ground when they're on grass or forbs, that will reduce their parasite exposure. Other ways to manage for less parasites is not feeding near water sources. As animals all visit the water source several times a day, there will be more manure there, potentially carrying parasite eggs, which will develop into infectious larvae. It's also usually wetter around troughs and drinkers, and if you have a natural water source like a creek or stream, that extra moisture in the ground is where parasites thrive. So the last thing you want to do is set up your hay feeder or lay down a feed row of hay near a water source, because once they eat through the hay, they'll be eating right off the ground where the parasite larvae are concentrated and thriving. During the winter months, parasite spread is lessened as the environment is not conducive to larval development. However, even during winter feeding, best practice is to manage your feeders or feed row in a way that limits or eliminates feeding on the ground where they have recently been fed or spend a lot of time. This is why we prefer a daily feed row. We put hay in a new place every day so that they're not eating where they were eating and pooping the day before. This isn't just parasite management, but also managing to limit anything else that is passed in feces. Of course, I have to mention that if your management system allows you to winter feed out on pasture in a new place every day, not only will you limit parasite and disease exposure, but you will also be adding all that good stuff right back to your pastures, increasing organic matter and building soil, which will ultimately increase your forage production. It's taken us a few years to get to a point where we could do this as far as infrastructure and keeping the goats out of trouble. But I'm very excited that we'll be feeding the does out on a feed row this year as soon as we have a good snow cover. Along with how you manage winter feeding, consider the type of hay you are feeding. A lot of available hay is not biologically appropriate for goats, and hay types vary widely by region. Sometimes you just have to work with what you can get, but if you can choose a hay that is a closer fit to what the goats would naturally eat, you will have healthier goats that are better equipped to fight off a parasite infestation. This will be our 4th year feeding sainfoin hay, and as I was visiting with the professionals from Utah State last week, I learned that they're doing a lot of research with sainfoin right now, and it's very promising. Sainfoin has higher tannin content, which I did not know when we first started feeding it, but it makes even more sense that the goats would do so well on it because of the natural dewormer right in their winter feed. Another component of management that can really help with parasite issues is multi-species grazing with cattle, either together or sequentially as their parasites are species specific. We follow the cattle with goats rather than run them together because our livestock guardian dogs don't see the cattle as part of their herd to protect, so that doesn't work out so well. Hopefully, we'll be able to train up new dogs to accept the cows and eventually graze them together, but for now, it's best to keep them separate. The goats will graze a pasture after the cows have grazed. The cows typically take the grass and leave all of the goat-preferred weeds, woody plants, and forbs. And if they do consume parasite eggs from the cows, the cycle stops there because the cattle parasites don't thrive in a goat, and it works the other way too. Goat parasites can't thrive in a cow. How do you know if your goat has a parasite load? Fecal egg counts are the most reliable way to know if your goats are infected. You can learn how to do this yourself with a microscope, McMaster slides, and a flotation solution, or you can take it to your vet and have them test it for you. The fecal egg count test counts the number of parasite eggs per gram of feces. You can also identify the type of parasite, measure treatment effectiveness, and make sure you're treating with the right dewormer so that you don't contribute to anthelmintic resistance. The best way to collect a fecal sample is to glove up with a little bit of lubricant and gently scoop out a few pellets from the rectum of the test animal. That's the most correct sampling procedure for accurate results. You can pick up fresh worm pellets from the ground, trying to avoid manure, dirt, and hay contamination, but you may get less accurate results. Also, you can test animals individually, especially if you suspect parasites, or you can do a group sample collecting pellets from 5 to 10 animals into one sample for pasture monitoring. If DIYing fecal egg counts is something you're interested in, let me know. I'll put together some resources I have, do some more learning myself, and share that with all of you. If you're in an area where parasites are a big concern, learning to do the test yourself could really pay off in the long run. I've not had a vet do fecal egg counts, but I've seen people quote prices in different areas, and it varies widely and can add up quickly. Another way to monitor specifically for anemia from Barber pole worms is FAMACHA score. FAMACHA is an odd acronym for Fafa Malan chart, developed by Dr. Fafa Malan, a South African veterinarian who developed the color-based system to assess anemia caused by the blood-sucking Barber pole worm. The method is to check the color of the inside of the lower eyelid and compare it to the FAMACHA chart. The scoring is 1 through 5, 1 being bright red and requiring no treatment, and 5 being white and critical level anemia. With this method, you treat 4s and 5s as well as 3s if they have other symptoms. This targeted deworming should reduce the development of resistance to anthelmintics. It's recommended that you score animals every 2 to 3 weeks during the warm, wet season, though the logistics of that could be very challenging in an extensive management system. For chemical dewormers, there are different classes and considerations. First, benzimidazoles. Examples include Safeguard, Panacur, and Valbazin. This is a broad-spectrum dewormer that is widely used, but there are high levels of resistance now in many goat herds. Next, imidazothiazoles or tetrahydropyrimidines. Examples include Levamed, Prohibit, and Rumetel. These are effective against stomach and intestinal worms and have a shorter withdrawal period. The final class is macrocyclic lactones like ivermectin and moxidectin. These work well against barber pole worms and many other internal and external parasites, but resistance is rising. Here are some important factors with any anthelmintic. Dose by weight according to label instructions for goats. As with many other medications, goats often require a higher dose than sheep because of their different metabolism, so make sure and find the correct dosage for goats. When we underdose dewormers, we contribute to resistance, which is becoming a very big problem. Use selective treatment rather than treating the entire herd, which would likely include animals that don't need treatment and again contribute to resistance. You can also do a fecal egg count reduction test to see if your treatment is effective. As far as natural dewormers, there are some herbal blends available. Those commonly contain garlic, wormwood, pumpkin seeds, and clove, and there is some supportive evidence for their effectiveness. Another option is copper boluses, which have been shown to reduce barber pole worms when given to goats that are copper deficient. Some people use apple cider vinegar or diatomaceous earth, but they're not proven to be effective alone, but may play a role in a broader management system. Another natural option is forage-based deworming, which is combining rotational and multi-species grazing along with tannin-rich plants that reduce parasites by binding proteins and inhibiting worm reproduction. Some of these plants include Sericea lespedeza, birdsfoot trefoil, chicory, and sainfoin. I've been very open on this podcast that we've moved away from nearly all conventional treatments for livestock on a routine basis. And as far as dewormers go, there's evidence that chemical dewormers can have a negative impact on soil microbiome. Since one of our most important goals here is to build soil, the last thing I want to do is negate our regenerative work with a chemical dewormer. So we use them very sparingly and only when needed. On the meat side of things, any animal that has been treated with anything chemical doesn't go into our Dry Creek Heritage Meats program. I feel like I walk a bit of a middle line in the use of antibiotics and chemical dewormers. I'm not going to let an animal die if I can save them with antibiotics or a chemical dewormer. I'll exhaust all other options first, but I'm not against the use of other interventions occasionally when the situation requires it. In the long run, we're breeding and selecting for livestock that need less intervention, and it's working, but as we work our way toward that, we'll occasionally run into a case that needs conventional treatment. Let's pull this all together into an integrated parasite control strategy. 1. Do regular fecal egg counts and FAMACHA checks to monitor. 2. Treat only when needed. 3. Manage your pastures with rest periods, co-grazing, and avoid overgrazing. 4. Support natural immunity with good nutrition. And 5. Track your results. Use records to spot trends. I hope this episode helps you understand internal parasites, the problems they cause, and what you can do to support and help your goats resist parasites, as well as know when to treat them. Internal parasites are one of the most costly and persistent challenges in the goat industry worldwide, but being aware of the potential problem and monitoring your herd to catch and treat issues early is the best way to avoid losses. If you have any questions, email me, Millie, at drycreekpastures.com, or come on over to the free community and start a conversation. That's at getgoatwise.com/community. See you next week. Hey there. Thanks for listening today. I'm so glad you're here. If this episode helped you or encouraged you in some way, share the link with your homesteading friends. And if you really want to help me out, click on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. You can connect with me on Instagram or email linked in the show notes, and meet me back here soon for more Get Goat Wise.